Welcome to VG Fam. I'm Jesse Jensen, also known as The Dead, and I have here with me Brooks Bishop, creator of the Xbox arcade title Aeternum, which is soon to be ported to Steam and currently available on itch.io as a downloadable Windows exe, which I'll put the link in the description, as well as the upcoming Glory Gunner, a top-down shoot-'em-up that looks amazing from what I've seen of the development screenshots and concept sketches on your Twitter page. Anyways, thanks for being a part of the first ever VG Fam interview. Very glad to have you on.
Oh yeah, good to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Cool. So what led to you originally wanting to be a game developer?
Well, I played video games for a long time, as long as I can remember. As far back as the NES, and even before that, my parents had an Atari 2600, so video games have always been there. But I don't think it was until Final Fantasy VI came out, or 3 in the US, however you want to call it, that I kind of really decided that that's what I wanted to do, because it just blew my mind.
Oh yeah, Final Fantasy is good for that.
Yep, especially 6. 6 is the pinnacle of that for me.
Yeah, well, yeah, music, graphics, the intro is just amazing. That's and
the story and characters, the entire package.
Yeah, that's an amazing choice for the game that set you off on that path.
Yep.
Cool. So Final Fantasy VI was the kind of catalyst, and then did you start getting into development around that time, or did you kind of sit on it and play more games and get more influence, and then eventually get into game development?
It was kind of a while before I got a computer I could really learn to develop on, but at that point, being influenced by an RPG was what I wanted to make, so I was going about writing story and making characters and stuff. And it just kind of branched out from there. Really, is when I got a computer I could mess with is when it really took off.
Rad. So I guess, Final Fantasy VI, the whole team was probably a big influence to you. What were some of your other biggest influences in gaming?
Influences. Well, you got to start with Shigeru Miyamoto.
Yeah.
Just because the sheer breadth of what he's had impact on as far as games go. He kind of did for video games what the Beatles did for music, right?
Yeah.
Like, so much of what we take for granted as far as conventions of video gaming is stuff that he created and laid out, and everything has just kind of come from there. Just so many different types of games. So he's a big one. Lately, I'm a huge fan of John Blow, even though so many people give him shit because they think he's pretentious, but I love him because he's got so many interesting ideas as to what makes games good and how to develop them that I've taken a lot of influence from.
Right.
His latest game, The Witness, is kind of changed my mind on a few of things that I want to do going forward. So, for better or worse, he's had an impact on what I'm going to do.
The Witness looks really cool coming up. The graphics are super amazing, colorful, vivid. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah, the art department on that game did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
I also like Shinobu Yagawa. Lately has been a big influence since he's the lead programmer from the arcade developer Rising, who made a lot of shoot 'em up games for the arcades in the 90s, and arguably some of the best shoot 'em ups. If you're in the community, you'll know his name. So he's been the biggest influence on the project I'm working on now.
Right. Okay. Yeah. That's probably shows a lot then in what I've seen of Glory Gunner so far.
Yeah. But
Rad.
yeah.
Sorry.
I was just going to end. Finally, I think another big influence of mine is Cognac, who a lot of people don't know his name, but they've kind of seen what he's done. Like, have you seen Legend of Princess or Noi to Love? That guy is my idol as far as like making games, because he does it all himself, but he's a fantastic pixel artist, an animator, and when it comes to just like building games, he knows how to make a game that just feels good to play. So,
right.
Big influence there.
Wow, I'm gonna have to check out Legend of the Princess myself. That looks awesome.
It's just kind of a little throwaway thing that he put together. It's imagining what if the princess in Zelda was the one in the hero role rather than Link.
That's awesome. Yeah.
But his upcoming game, Iconoclasts, is going to be like a magnum opus. It's going to be great.
I'm going to have to look into all those.
Yeah.
So
that's Konjak, Konjak.
Yeah, those are games I hadn't actually heard of myself, so I'm going to have to look into those. And so, how did you end up learning the many disciplines of the craft?
Just a lot of reading, and probably even more trial and error. You just kind of have to get down to it and do.
Right. Yeah. Well, that kind of makes sense for a lot of people, especially that are involved in coding and programming and stuff.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
a lot of trial
That's
and
the
error.
only. That's the only way you can do it, is to just do. Because if you just sit there and think about it, you're not learning anything.
So, what was the first program or programming language that you went after to get into making your first ever games?
Well, the first computer I had to really play with was 286, right? Long time ago, barely even 2000, like before 2000. So the only thing that came with was BASIC, or QBasic with DOS. So that's the first thing I had. That's the first thing I played with. From there, you kind of have to move up. So moving on to C++ and trying different things, going all over.
So yeah, very. A lot of people come from BASIC and then move on. So that was a very traditional kind of path.
Yeah,
for you
but
then.
it's the kind of thing where you just have to start with what you got.
Yeah, especially on a 286. Wow.
Yep.
Cool. So, so moving on, what is it about bullet hell shooters that made you want to start creating them? Especially since you were saying you originally wanted to do RPGs.
Yeah. So the funny thing about that in making Aeternum wasn't the game I wanted to make originally. So I have this idea for a game that I've wanted to make now for a while, but it's a huge project, and that's kind of the way it is with all game developers, is grand ideas, right? So one of the aspects of that game was going to be a programmable bullet engine for interesting bullet patterns and stuff. So I figured, okay, if I'm going to do that, why don't I make a smaller game so I can build that engine and learn how to use it, so I'm better at using it and I have it when I go on to make this bigger game.
Wow.
So that's where Aeternum came from. It's tech that I was developing for a different game that took on a life of its own.
Wow. Well, so are you still working on that other game, or is that kind of something that is just gone?
So that game is kind of my long-term goal. That's the game I want to learn how to make games in order to make. Because that one, I think it's a really good idea, and I want to do it justice. So there's so much I want to do before then to make that a good game, but I need to learn.
That's cool. That sounds exciting, honestly, because what you've done so far is impressive enough. So
it's a completely different thing. It's really not like Aeternum. It just kind of uses the tech, a lot of different things that I want to get to before that.
So okay, so yeah, you have other projects, but that's kind of a long-term goal that you have going.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, shoot, I'm looking forward to seeing that one that eventually comes out then. And do you have any projects or plans to release any titles in other genres coming up anytime soon?
Anytime soon?
I mean,
so that one is more kind of a exploration kind of game. So I've also got ideas for kind of like some Metroidvania style games, and got a roguelike type of game that I've got in mind that I've put a little work into. I've even got like an idea for a kart shooter that I wanted to make, kind of like Mario Kart or Diddy Kong Racing, that kind of thing.
What would be the most immediate one that you see coming maybe after Glory Gunner?
I've got I had an idea for a kind of like a light kind of puzzle Metroidvania in the same universe as Aeternum that I kind of put a bunch of work into. So I've got assets and some maps and stuff for. Yeah,
I'm a big fan of Metroidvania games myself, so that would be
it's
really
kind of
cool.
more puzzle focused. Like, have you played like Escape Goat?
I haven't, but write that one down too.
Yeah, kind of like that.
What made you choose to be an indie developer on your own rather than joining a larger development team?
Probably, honestly, cost effectiveness. Just I'm cheap. It's free to work for myself. I would really love to get, a team together and make something really good, but I'm one of those people that believes that indie artists, no matter what they do, art, programming, whatever, deserve to be paid for their work, like, a good price.
Right.
And I can't afford to give it to them right now. So.
And what about, say, trying to become a employee at a large company like, Microsoft, Sony, Rockstar, something like that?
Yeah, well, for now, it's just kind of like I've got ideas that I want to do, and I think I can make it work. So I'm trying to make it work.
Right. So it's kind of that drive just to have your own ideas flourish rather than just being a cog in the wheel, right?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah, that's that.
I think it's something most artists have.
So rumor has it that you create your own game engines rather than using the many available for free or on the market. Can you tell us a bit about why you go that route?
Yeah, so I think engines are really kind of a personal preference thing. Like, people who use engines are most often, their preference is they like to get down and make the game itself. Engines, I think, are really a personal preference kind of thing, because the kind of people that use a pre-built engine are the ones that just have an idea and they don't want to be bogged down by having to get to the point where they can make that a real thing, which is good, right? I'm kind of the opposite kind of person. I like to start from the bare bones and know exactly what I'm building and make it specifically so that it works for what I want to do. So that's where I'm coming from.
It's very ambitious.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is, so Aeternum is an Xbox Live indie games game. So on the Xbox, at least as far as XBLIG went, there weren't any engines. There's no game maker, there's no Unity, there's none of that. You had to basically make the whole game yourself in that. It was a framework that lets you build games. It didn't have all that kind of pre-built stuff that was more specific, like Unity or Game Maker. So I had to start from scratch on that, and that's just kind of what I do.
That's cool. That's cool. Like I said, it's a super ambitious goal, but I'm sure it's paid off in the control that you have.
Yeah, at this point, I've got, I think, a pretty fair set of libraries and stuff that I've built up over time, that I like to use and I know how to use, that I think make it a lot easier now.
Yeah, that's definitely the way to go if you can, but it seems like a lot of work. Do you have any plans to release any of your own game engines publicly, or have you already?
I don't think so, mostly because, it's all really specialized code with not much comments as far as making it understandable. And
right.
It's super specialized for what the game is. So it would take a lot of work to kind of rip all that stuff out and make it just a generic engine you could plug other stuff into. So that's not something I see myself doing soon, just because it's more work and I'd rather just work on games.
Right. Well, yeah, the games themselves are really the end goal anyways, so I can see how that goes. But speaking of your game Aeternum, which you were saying was an Xbox arcade title, we know you've been porting that to Steam. Can you tell us about your experience with Steam and the Xbox indie dev programs and how they differed from each other?
Okay, yeah. So as far as the Xbox goes, it's kind of important to note that there was a big difference in there was kind of two different ways the games were released on the Xbox. There was Xbox Arcade, which is where people that had a publisher, AAA games, that's where they went. Okay? And then there was also Xbox Live Indie Games, which was a completely separate thing. Like, they both were downloadable in the store there, but there were two separate ways of getting a game on the Xbox. So Xbox Arcade, you had to have a publisher. Xbox Live Indie Games was self-publish, and that was really nice. It was kind of a groundbreaking program as far as indie publishing goes, because all it took was $100 to get a license, and you'd have to have an Xbox, and that was it. So the process for getting a game up was super lax. Like, it was so easy. All you had to make sure was you had an actual game, and then it ran, it didn't crash or anything, and it didn't run afoul of any kind of like decency problems or anything, and you could get a game on the Xbox. It was so easy. and it was so nice. And the people, it was a community effort kind of thing. Like, you had to go through peer review, so it was other indie game developers had to approve your game. That's how you got on. So it was so nice because you got to know all these other indie developers and make a lot of good connections and get feedback. It's a great platform and kind of groundbreaking as far as indie stuff goes. And that's a far cry from kind of what Steam is. So Steam, the greenlight process is what you have to go through, and unfortunately that's kind of basically just a popularity contest. Because in order to get a game on Steam through greenlight, you have to go through community voting, which is basically everyone on Steam just gives a thumbs up or thumbs down, and then you're at the whim of Steam as to whether you get on or not. There's no actual relevance to the voting. It's just like, if you get enough, maybe they'll notice your game and approve you. It's a very different process, but the difference is that, you know, getting on Steam is harder, but the benefits are a lot greater.
We're looking forward to seeing Aeternum on Steam, so hopefully that's all
pretty
going
soon.
well.
So we're already proved, and I've got the game. It runs on there. It just gotta dial in those last little tweaks and then push it out. Yeah, it's on itch, and it's on the Humble widget through my webpage too.
I'll put the link once again down there in the description, and probably put one of those reference links up at the top. And what do you see in the near future for indie game development?
I kind of think more alternatives for release potential are kind of on the horizon. Like, itch.io is, I think, a huge deal. Like, I think it's going to be big, because Steam up to this point has been like the only platform you can really release on PC. This is the only way you can get a game out there and make any sort of profit on it. But alternatives like itch.io being viable is, I think, the next big thing. Because you're starting to see people that would normally just go to Steam are branching out and finding out indie games elsewhere. And it's nice because those little niche platforms like that are a lot easier to release on.
What is your advice for aspiring game developer geniuses like yourself?
All game developers, when they start out, are thinking too big. That's the first thing I tell everyone, is whatever you're thinking is too big. Get smaller. And whatever you're thinking of then is still too big. So get smaller. You gotta get as small as you can, and the goal is you want to actually finish something. Because until then you're just kind of flailing. But as soon as you get small enough, then you can actually finish something. And when you finish something, that's the point where you've learned so much from what you've done. You can continue moving on. There's only so much you can learn just treading water. It's getting there is where you really learn something. Like, Aeternum had like 2 more stages and another character when it was originally conceived. And at some point I said, okay, I gotta cut stuff if I'm ever gonna finish this game. So I buckled down and just cut what I could and made a nice, smaller, tighter game that I could actually finish and release. I think that was the biggest thing that helped. I'm
going to ask you a few rapid fire questions. Okay, so let's jump right into this. So first off, Gunstar Heroes or Contra Hardcore?
Gunstar. Treasure is such a good company. I love those guys.
Yes, I agree. And what about Philosoma or Einhander?
Einhander.
Gradius 3 or Super R-Type?
Gradius.
And Ikaruga or Mushihime-sama? Ikaruga or Mushihime-sama?
It's tough because they're really different things. They're different beasts.
Yeah.
I've played more Ikaruga, but Mushi's probably a tighter game.
Right.
Or a more interesting game, I think.
Right, okay. And Battle Garuga or Image Fight?
Oh, Garuga, of course. I mean, I name-dropped Shinobu Yagawa at the start of this, right?
Yeah.
That's the programmer for Battle Garuga.
Okay, yeah. So that's a pretty easy choice then for you.
Yep.
Okay, and then what are your top, say, 3 to 5 modern pixel games?
Modern pixel games. Shovel Knight's probably the gold standard at this point. It's just the tightest package as far as making a good game and making something that looks good using a pixel style goes. Blue Revolver just came out. That's a nice indie shmup with some beautiful graphics by Wolf. Owlboy just came out too. That's an amazingly beautiful pixel art game. And Iconoclast isn't out yet, but I'm predicting that's going to be huge. And I'm a huge. This isn't a game, but I'm a huge fan of Paul Robertson for pixel art. He did the art for the Scott Pilgrim game, but before that, he's most famous for doing Pirate Baby Cabana Battle, which is a pixel art short film that looks like a beat 'em up.
So, lastly, I just wanted to have you have a chance to tell us about any upcoming gaming releases or current projects that you're working on that we might not already know about.
The Aeternum Steam release early next year, probably January. Hopefully not as late as February. I want to get that out soon, but you can stay tuned to eternumgame.com for that. And Glory Gunner is what I'm working on now. Also, actually, full title Harriet Fortune: Glory Gunner. Harriet Fortune is the main character. She's kind of a Indiana Jones type. So it's a top-down shooter set in World War II.
Is there a website yet for Glory Gunner, or a website where people can go to for that?
Yeah, so me and my partner Jesse Bishop, who does the music, we are Creaky Lantern Games. So our website for that now is creakylantern.com. So you can actually find both Aeternum and Glory Gunner there.
Okay, cool. So and I'll put that also in the description. Once again, appreciate you coming on and doing the interview and answering all our questions.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
If you want to check out Aeternum or any of Brooks' other games, you can find the links in the description below. And of course, like and subscribe for more news and information from VG Fam.